Sunday, I'm
Have you read the
actually
book, The Moral Landscape?
Oh yeah, I have, but I
The,
disagree with Sam Harris's premise.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, that's a okay. Well, sorry, you were gonna say something. Sunday, what?
Well, maybe if you're interested in the moral landscape, you should tune into the podcast I'm doing Sunday because I'm interviewing someone named Jesse Prinz, who's moral philosopher out at I think NYU. Um, and I'm really excited to interview him because he's like someone who's really influenced my opinion on this. But that
Hmm.
so that's something that just like have you ever read Hume? Either of you?
Yeah, it's been years, but I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Eddie?
I'm familiar, but I can't say
Mhm.
that I like read up on it.
Okay, yeah. So Hume, he came up with like the famous like you can't the is ought fallacy,
Right.
and so a lot of like moral philosophers say that's kind of like the thing that debunked Sam Harris's moral philosophy 300 years ago or
Yeah. The
whatever.
Didn't Sam Harris wrote The Moral Landscape way after him, right? Isn't Sam Harris
Oh
like
yeah,
trying to
humans like
rebut?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I was gonna say so and actually last week I had on the guy that I was just talking about that kind of maybe questioned my atheism a little bit. And so him and I were talking about it, and he also kind of has the same premise that Sam Harris does, which is that morality is objective, and that and I understand because like the possible worlds scenario is something that's really common in philosophy, but my issue with it is that there's not an infinite amount of possible worlds, right? We only have one that we are experiencing. And so, um, well, yeah, I don't know if this is another rabbit trail, but Sam Harris's whole premise is kind of off of the possible worlds thing. So it's like, Eddie, have you read The Moral Landscape?
No, but I'm familiar with it. I think
Mhm.
from what I understand, uh, Sam Harris does a pretty good job of laying out like a secular moral landscape, but
Uh-huh.
he jumps a little too far to say that it is actually objective and fails to just admit that it is a subjective preference that we have
Right.
that starts it all out. I mean, we can objectively identify things that will, bring us closer to a goal or further away from a goal, which that's talking about the landscape. But the fact that we have a goal is it's just subjective. It's not like this uh, objective fact that doesn't take into account our preference, because
Yeah.
that's what
So
subjectivity is.
Yeah, so Nathan, earlier you brought up veganism, and this is something that maybe would make you consider this with Sam Harris's argument, because Sam Harris's argument is it's morality is objectively what is good for not having suffering for all humans, I believe. I don't, does he go further to possible creatures, or is it just humans? Do you remember? I can't remember. So
He basically lays out the idea that if you can imagine, if good means anything,
uh-huh.
then it must mean like you said, like if you can imagine a universe where everything suffers as much as it can for as
Uh-huh.
long as it can before it ultimately perishes, then
Mm-hmm.
that would be a bad universe. Because
Right.
if the word bad means anything at all, then it must apply to that scenario.
Right.
And the opposite must be true for a good universe, right?
Yeah.
And he claims that's all one needs for his foundation for saying that there is objective morality.
Right.
However, he calls it a landscape because, unlike a declaration, morality is more complex than just good, bad.
Right.
It's a landscape, it's a three dimensional
Three-dimensional space. Yeah.
game of chess, right? So, what is good for some people and some groups and some organisms may be very bad for others. Um, However, I think what would be addressed in either veganism or vegetarianism is taking into consideration the quality of consciousness. And now this is where it gets really confusing because, and this is where I'm currently at with my thought process on not just veganism, it'd be vegetarianism, I suppose, or any kind of, because like
Yeah.
you can make a case that maybe vegetarianism would be better.
Or pescatarianism, or
Yeah. Uh, the thought process though is like we can demonstrate in a laboratory that the same kind of phenomenon in a fruit fly's brain, which looks just like chronic pain, can exist in a fruit fly, right? So what looks like chronic pain in our brains can be recognized in a fruit fly. So we have reason to believe a fruit fly can feel chronic pain. And if that's the case, is the quality of that pain equal or greater or lesser than anything else with a larger brain? And does that enter in an understanding of quality of consciousness? And so, but we don't really understand consciousness, right? So we can't really make a strong case one way or the other necessarily, but that would be kind of what I think people would be, if they were to merge those two worlds of Sam Harris's Moral Landscape and trying to come to terms with vegetarianism.
yeah, I think it's
that's kind of
interesting that
where those
Sam Harris
intersect.
is a determinist, yet he believes in objective morality. It seems to be kind of contradictory to me, but
Interesting. Why would that be? Why can't
because
those both exist?
I mean, I just think that when you think of objective morals, it means that anything anywhere could come to the same conclusion of wrongness or rightness, right? Um,
Uh, yeah. I suppose. Well, if in a, can you say that again? I don't know if I really understood that.
so if objective morals exist, anything
Uh-huh.
can come to the conclusion of wrongness or rightness. Anything. So objectivity means that it exists no matter what. I mean, objective morality would mean that it exists outside of humanity. Objective morality would mean that it exists outside of animals. So what happens if there is no humans or animals?
I see.
I think, yeah, it'd be really useful to like kind of nail down what we mean by objective and subjective, because my understanding of objective and subjective is that subjective means that it's determined by the subject.
Yeah.
Not that it's like determined or random or anything. That doesn't matter.
No. Sorry,
Yeah.
I might have confused you. What
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is that if something is objectively moral, then anybody can come to the conclusion that that thing is wrong, right? So if I think that murder is bad, this is obviously the most basic thing, right? If I think that murder is bad, and that's objectively bad, if murder is objectively wrong, then anything in the universe, or any living thing, I guess, because this is where I don't really understand how it can be objective, because outside of conscious beings, right and wrong don't really exist, right? But
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you understand objectivity to mean, like, let's say everyone agreed that the Earth was 13.4 billion years old? I'm sorry, not the Earth, the universe. Is that what makes it objective, that everyone agreed?
No.
Okay.
Objective would mean that there's a way that it's factually found. So everybody agreeing would be irrelevant, because if it's objectively true, and people can agree on objectively false things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I guess my next question would be, can something be objectively true and unable to be found by subjects?
Sure.
Okay. So if
I would like, for
if something
example,
can something be objectively morally or objectively wrong, but no one has discovered it yet? Like, is that
in my opinion,
yeah?
well, I don't think that anything can be objectively wrong because I don't believe in objective morality.
Yeah, but like when you were talking about Sam Harris, and I remember you saying that determinism and objectivity can't.
I'm saying that I find it to be interesting that he's a determinist. He doesn't believe in free will. So the reason why I think that's interesting is because I mean, maybe that's kind of a weird line to draw, but I'm just thinking that he believes that everything is determined, essentially. And so people murdering people is wrong, but it's outside of their control in a way. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is like, it's hard to explain. Like, free will is a whole complex thing, but it's like, is it really wrong if they were predisposed to do it? Do you?
Yeah. So,
Okay,
like,
I
for
think I know.
example, like if a brick fell and killed a brick fell off of a roof and
Right.
killed someone, a really
Would that be
tall
murder?
building, you wouldn't say
That's
it's
bad.
the brick's fault,
Exactly.
but you would still hold the brick as the reason why.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, in my view, humans are bricks. I don't
Yeah.
really think that we're any different than bricks. I think that we have come to this idea that we are special because we have a conscious experience. But at the end of the day, we're still just a collection of atoms that are conscious and self-aware. So we're bricks in a weird way. Do you know what I'm saying?
So then to expand on the analogy, it would be like if there was this machine or this mechanism that was consistently throwing off bricks and killing people, we wouldn't say that machine is at fault because
It's not evil. It's not an evil machine. It's just a machine that's faulty, maybe.
But we would still work to shut down that machine. Or
correct.
We would may not hold it
because our subjectivity would declare that is not good for whatever humanity or whatever it's taken out.
Yeah. So I think if I were to play devil's advocate, I think Sam might take that position where it's like it's determined, but you're still the thing that is causing this issue. So what can we do to change it? Should we lock you up? Can we deter you? Et cetera, et cetera. Even if it's all determined, because you're just trying.
Yeah, but I don't know if that necessarily has any relation to whether or not it's objectively morally wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, I agree with Sam in that case. Like, I still want to hold people accountable and have a justice system and things like that.
Yeah.
But I just can't say that I mean, I have thought pretty deeply about this and I can't come to that conclusion. And I have, a lot of friends that believe in objective morality and obviously Sam Harris does. And I love Sam Harris and I understand his premise pretty well, but I just don't agree with it. So
I've got a couple questions. If can somebody be, I think you and I would probably agree, but I'll ask it as a question anyway. Can somebody be really certain of something about a factual claim and still be mistaken about it?
Absolutely.
Okay. And can a person think some action they're taking is not causing suffering, but that action is causing suffering?
Absolutely.
Okay. In Sam Harris's understanding, he would say the only thing he needs for objective morality is a universe in which everything suffers as much as it can for as long as it can, right?
Yeah.
So if that's and if that's the foundation, would you say that there are some ways to move about throughout life that would lead towards a greater net suffering and some ways that would lead to a greater net positive?
So once we set up those parameters, it becomes objective, but it's still parameters that we establish, which makes it subjective. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So we are saying that that's the rules. It's like chess, or you said chess earlier,
Mhm.
or it's like any
Yeah, in the same way that facts are facts, right?
I don't think so. So I think that um
Are
if
there
you
facts?
yes, but I don't
Okay.
think that you set up rules for the facts to exist. So like if you drop a water bottle in a unobstructed space, then it's always going to fall at the same speed, which um, is the law of gravity, I guess. So what is it, 9.8 per seconds squared or whatever,
Yeah, just
feet per
about.
second
Yeah.
squared. So that rule is going to be the same regardless of you and I coming up with it. We
Okay, sorry. Can I
yeah,
interrupt?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, the thing about subjectivity is that it can also be a fact. So, like, it's a fact that you like chocolate ice cream. It's a fact that you like pizza. It's a fact that you prefer to live rather than die. And so, in that way, it's factually true. But subjectivity is not doesn't mean it is not factual. What it means is it's determined. The truthfulness of it is determined by the subject.
Right.
So
I agree with you.
whether it's chocolate, whether you like chocolate or like vanilla, is determined by the subject that you're asking the question to. If that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, I
But it's
totally agree with
still,
you. Yeah.
yeah,
So if I say chocolate is good, well, that is a fact for me, which
no,
makes it subjective.
it's a
Why?
it's well, it's a fact that
When I
you
say no, I didn't say I like chocolate. I said chocolate is good. So that is a fact for me, but it might not be a fact for you. Okay. So if I say
mm,
murder is good or murder is bad, then that is a fact for me. But if you're Dahmer, you might disagree with me.
I don't know if I understand what it means. It's a fact for me because it depends really what you mean by good.
Right. So, well, we can just use Sam Harris's wording. I mean, so if I choose those parameters, good is everybody not suffering. That's good,
Yeah.
right? Well, then, I mean, I can look at the world and determine whether or not something is moral, but who am I to come up with those rules? I guess at the end of the day, those are just rules that I'm making. And if I say rape is bad, well, is it bad for a zebra or a lion or something? Well, that's like a whole different thing. You know what I mean? And um, maybe 10,000 years ago, it might have been different for humans, I guess. And so I don't know. I just think that I don't see how I think that we can come to an understanding based on arbitrary rules that we determine, but I don't see how they can be objectively true, which would mean that they're found universally among everybody.
Yeah, I think the way that Matt Dillahunty describes it is once we agree on the goal,
Yeah,
what well-being or is what he talks about, then you can objectively assess.
totally. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, Nathan. I kind of derailed what you were.
Oh no, that was great. No,
Yeah.
yeah, because once we agree what the goal is, and I think to tie what Matt Dillahunty says into what Sam Harris is saying, the goal would be the avoidance of suffering and the promotion of well-being. And if that is the goal, then wouldn't there be right and wrong ways to do
Yeah.
things
oh yeah, absolutely.
Objectively.
Yeah.
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 So-
objectively? And
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's kind of like this, like it's like a weird thing though, because it's not truly objectively true, right? I mean, I guess we're coming up with
that's why it's a landscape. Because what's bad for some may be good for others, and vice versa. And
So-
it's more than just black and white.
I agree. And so that is the whole like philosophy of the many worlds philosophy.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
if you
Right.
are able to construct an infinite amount of worlds where people can like if everybody constructed their own world of what is good and bad for them, then we could determine, like, if you were to say, like, everybody determines like what's good and bad for them, and that's objectively good and bad for them, then objective morals exist because there's all of these infinite possibilities. But the truth is that there's not an infinite amount of worlds that we know of anyways. And I just think that the rules are, at the end of the day, they're arbitrarily set by humans. We're all agreeing on them for whatever reason serves our purpose. Like in Afghanistan, or not, maybe not Afghanistan, but in Saudi Arabia, burqas are really cool. And they might all subjectively set the parameters for that to be morally good, but I disagree. And we can say from our perspective that that isn't good for human flourishing, you know, because it holds back women or whatever you want to say. But
we can be mistaken about what's good and bad, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe they are mistaken, but maybe we are too.
Or we could be mistaken too. Yeah.
So this is complex. I this is why I love moral philosophy, but it's super complex. So I'm not like ready to die on any hill with this. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. I recommend checking out Reed from Cordial Curiosity has a new video with Peter Boghossian, who wrote the book Manual for Creating Atheists, and also the book How to Have Impossible Conversations.
Yeah, I just read
both
that.
Both of which I highly recommend to anybody watching this right now. Totally check out those two books, especially How to Have Impossible Conversations. That one is, I love that one.
I just read that one yesterday. I read the other one a long time ago, and I just read How to Have Impossible Conversations yesterday, and it was...
Oh, great.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
Well, I listened to it on Audible, but...
And they had Reed had a great conversation with Peter about moral epistemology and whether or not it can be a tool to figure out things that are moral. And I happen to think that it's probably the only thing that a secular community can really grasp onto to make a case for morality in general. And so there may be something else. It's the only thing that's come across my path that has convinced me, however, that morality can be determined without appealing to any kind of god or gods or any kind of dogma or belief system, really, that we can talk about the right ways to move towards our goals to accomplish the best well-being for everybody, objectively. And if it's not objective and it's only subjective, that's a possibility. But to me, in my mind, the subjective bubble that we've been talking about here exists within a greater objective bubble. And if somebody's blind over there, that's a subjective experience for them. But that's also an objective observation about their subjective experience. So to me, subjectivity exists within the objectivity we've been talking about this whole time.
Have you guys ever heard of the guy? He is a YouTuber. He's not really posting anymore. His name is Theoretical Bullshit.
Negative.
I haven't seen that.
Okay. He's one of my favorite like YouTubers. Him and Matt Dillahunty are big influences of mine, and I think he does a really good job of breaking down morality. It has a lot of similarities with the Moral Landscape, and it was like posted about 3 months before Sam put his book out. But you think that he would be influenced by him. But if you just look up a treatise on morality, or just look up theoretical BS, his content is really, really good. And another reason why I usually get on Twitter is because I ended up just having a conversation with him. Like, this is someone that I like look up to, and I was like, wow, this guy's got a lot of good stuff. And years later, I got on Twitter and I just started talking with him. Like, wow, freaking Twitter's awesome. So I recommend that. Another thing I wanted to say was there was a debate between Sam Harris and William Lane Craig, in which they talk about like the foundation of what Sam Harris would talk about well-being. And William Lane Craig would always say, well, why is well-being important, and trying to kind of nail down that it's ultimately subjective, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it always bugged me that Sam never just answered because creatures that didn't care about well-being didn't survive.
Yeah.
Like, that's why, you
Yeah.
know. And he just never wanted to go there, and I don't know why. But
So this is just kind of a weird question, but do you think that fear is an objective thing? Is fear objective? Like, would you say that like fear is something that can be objectively measured?
Well, I don't know about Eddie, but I would personally go even further and say all subjective descriptions like that exist within the objective world, even though it's in my brain, and my brain follows the laws of physics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we use these words to describe our experiences, but our experiences are contingent on the external world. And if you alter my brain or remove something from my brain, it changes my internal experience, which then changes how I would use these words to describe things.
Yeah. So I'm gonna make a
I don't know if that answered your
recommendation.
question, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, no, it does. It does. I'd like to recommend two books. Are you a reader? Sounds like you are.
oh yeah, hmm
Okay, cool. Well, you got a lot of downtime. Um,
yeah. I'm in quarantine, so let's do it.
yeah. So let me get the titles though, just because I tend to read too much, and so I forget the name of the books that I just read. So one is The Atheist's Guide to Reality by Alex Rosenberg. Have you ever heard of
Okay.
Alex Rosenberg?
I've heard of him. I don't believe I've read his books yet.
Yeah,
But
he's
it's called what is it called again? I'm writing it down.
The Atheist's Guide to Reality. And I don't
Okay.
know, Eddie, did we lose you? Because I don't see your face. Oh no, you're still there. Okay, cool.
yeah, I think I dropped and then reconnected.
Okay. And then the other book that I was going to recommend. This is actually this one's a little bit more difficult to find.
hmm
Um, sorry. And it's only a paperback. It's called The Conscious Brain: How Intent and Attention Endangers Experience. And that's by Jesse Prince, who I'm having on the podcast on Sunday. So this is a lot of stuff that we talked about in this domain, and I'll definitely be bringing that up with him on Sunday if you're interested in tuning in, because he's really, really like he's really I really appreciate his opinion. It's really good. So
hmm
yeah. So
Cool.
yeah, man. Do you guys have anything that you want to ask me or say or anything before we or well, why don't you guys talk about your YouTube channels and stuff, and that way we can at least